6CX Fruit Cove, WVOB.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.
This is Emily Hicks, and you're listening to the Elder Law Hour. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a great show for you today. Charles Taverna is back talking about owning rental properties as a retirement solution, and also the difference between gifting and inheriting real property and what to look out for with that. Sheriff Hardwick is also back on the show discussing what crimes are most affecting the elderly in our community. But first, Travis Dauchy is here, and we're going to talk about wealth planning for blended families. So stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and I'm very lucky to be here with Sheriff Hardwick, the Sheriff of St. Johns County, if I can actually get my words out this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, Sheriff. I really appreciate your time and everything that you guys do.
Emily, thanks for having me on. I appreciate what you do. I think the goal of you and me and your entire staff and team is to protect the elderly and their assets and their families. And I think we're all doing this job together. So again, thanks for having me on, and looking forward to your questions today.
Thank you so much. We certainly try. They don't always listen to us though, do they?
It's like our kids. Our kids don't listen either.
I know. Well, I always talk about there's a funny thing that happens as you get older. There's a little bit of a changing of the guard where the kids become in charge of the parents sometimes, and they don't like that. That's a really hard transition to make, and not one that I've successfully made yet with my own parents.
I'm sure my kids do the same thing. My oldest son is 32 and my youngest son is 27. So I'm sure they're saying they're eventually going to get old one day. So they're trying to prepare for it.
These kids already have the upper hand when it comes to technology. My 12-year-old is like, oh, Mom, let me fix your phone for you. Let me do this for you. She now just goes ahead and does it for me, which I kind of like. But then I'm also like, oh, I'm not old yet. I'm really grateful for your time and so grateful for what you guys do. And I'm interested to know, maybe like the current state of affairs sort of in St. Johns County. And you guys have a list, correct, of the top crimes that are committed and what's going on. So can we talk about that?
Absolutely, Emily. Thanks for asking about it too. Just, one thing I want to talk about real quick is the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office we have a specialized unit in our criminal investigation division. It's called SVU, or Special Victims Unit. That Special Victims Unit is the ones that kind of, they're the specialists that handle the elderly. So they work a lot of crimes, of course. Yes, General Patrol may take the original report, but eventually it'll make it over to Special Victims Unit. We also have a financial crimes unit, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But the financial crimes unit is what we're seeing a lot of with these scams and these people that are taking advantage of the elderly and, besides other victims, but the elderly are getting, of course, involved in these scams where they're giving their credit cards out, their bank account numbers out there, where they think that their loved one has been arrested and they got to pay for, the booking fees or the attorney fees on that. So we had a list put together, and with that list too, it talks about too, like, what is the average age of our victim kind of thing? And we're just talking again about our victims are elderly, or are people that are more prone, of course, to being victims of crime. And when I look at the actual ages for the victims that are 65 and older, 65 and 66 are kind of the number one target area that we're seeing most of our victims. Again, a lot of it's going to be exploiting the elderly, of course. When you get over that age, that's the magical number, is 65 for exploitation charges in the state of Florida. But also the graph kind of skips up after that to 69, and then it goes to 75. And those are kind of our top 4 victim age ranges here in St. Johns County when you go on the scale of 65 to 100 roughly. And then out of that, we actually, when I pulled these graphs and I'm kind of looking through this, this was a no shocker for me. The number one offense we're working where the elderly are a victim are grand theft, which of course is that high value ticket item, whether it be something of monetary, whether it be a necklace or whether it be actually cash or bonds or something like that. And then right after that, of course, is that petit theft. So, of course, as you know, the dollar marks the petit theft area there. But so it's theft. Theft in general is kind of what we're seeing the most of. After that, it goes down.
Can I ask you really quick, what is that dollar mark?
The Florida state statute used to be $301, used to be grand theft. And then, so if it was $301, it was grand theft.
Oh,
well,
wow.
I think we had so many of those cases over the years Legislature changed it to not too many years ago. So now it's $1,000 or more is grand theft.
$1,000?
Yes, ma'am.
You
991.
can tell I don't do criminal law.
99 cents is a misdemeanor theft. Yes, we're researching that now, but I'm almost positive it's over $1,000. It definitely changed off the 301. I felt so bad. This is an ignorant police officer back in the day. We were so excited, like we got a grand theft case. This guy stole $350 from Winn-Dixie. And I think we just got a little wiser and smarter because the court systems were being worn down, of course, with misdemeanors and felonies. So the legislature bumped that up to over $1,000, but we're verifying that right now as we're speaking.
Well,
so
in my mind, it was way higher. So I'm completely off the mark. I've not been to law school in 20 years. I haven't looked at it.
Actually, there's some type of, I'm just drawing a blank here for a minute. There's some type of statutory requirement for if it's over, like I just off the top of my head, it's like 20 to 25,000 is a second degree felony. You know, $50,000 and more is probably a first degree felony. That's
what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yes. Here, I'm defending you, Emily. Great job.
Thank you. I'm so glad you thought of that because I can't, I was there's something about 50,000. I know there is.
See, you're an attorney. So as soon as we get off this is a Zoom meeting today, you're going to say, you know what? I got to look this thing up. It's been how many years since law school?
Oh my gosh. Well, 19. Next year will be 20 years I graduated. But I've never done criminal. Just let me caveat. For those of you who are listening and thinking, why should I be listening to this lady who doesn't know anything about the statutes? I have not done any criminal ever and have not even thought about that since law school 20 years ago. So anyway.
So my staff is correcting me. They're telling me it's 750. So you and I have research to do.
Well, we don't know. I shouldn't have even. I'm sorry I asked.
I'm not arresting anybody for grand theft. I'll be honest with you, because I haven't arrested anybody probably in a long time. I wasn't a car chase yesterday. But that's another topic. So theft is a number one target on our elderly here in St. Johns County. And again, these stats are from the last year. Some things we can talk about whenever you're ready. As far as like we just had one. We actually put a scam alert on our social media platforms where, Rob Hardwick calls, Emily, and Emily. I tell Emily that your daughter has been arrested. My daughter's been arrested, or granddaughter's been arrested. Yes. Where's she at? She's in the St. Johns County jail. Okay. It's going to cost $5,000 for me to go there as an attorney and talk to her. I'm coming by your residence to get the check from you for $5,000, and I'll work on getting your daughter out. Okay. Sounds good. I'm on the way there. This just happened a couple of days ago, and the person goes to the residence, actually a white male named Matt. Of course, whatever he gives her, he shows up and she gives him a check for $5,000 to go basically retrieve her daughter or granddaughter from the St. Johns County jail. That doesn't exist.
Oh, and, wow.
Yeah, I know. It's so sad too, because it's such a quick, these criminals, they have so much time in their hands. If they would put this effort into some type of business, they would be very successful probably. But I mean, it's just, they victimize our elderly, and it makes me sick to my stomach because like I told my mom the other day, somebody called the phone, and again, she's 80 years old. And they said that there was a back due on a phone bill that they discovered. And before they actually report on her credit, she needed to send $500 in Target gift cards to this. I'm like, Mom, why would you send for Target gift cards? Well, it sounded legit. She said the guy was very nice on the phone. I said,
Target gift cards?
It happens all the time. Those scams are all the time. Where send us gift cards, Amazon gift cards, Target gift cards, Visa gift cards, and then we'll take care of, because you missed jury duty. That's another good one. You missed jury duty, so you got to pay the fine to the civil courts, but send us Target gift cards, and then we're the collection agency, and we'll take care of it. It's stuff like that.
Yeah, we did a legal minute on that, the top 5. We had a whole episode about elder abuse, with financial crimes and things like that. But that's interesting that you had the call where the guy went in person, because normally that kind of stuff, like you're saying, it's like you send the money, you have to wire it to this account, and all of that. So you think of that as something that happens as a transaction over the internet or over the phone or something like that. But the guy actually went in person. Physically
showed up. We got a description of the car. I can promise you now, our SVU and our real-time intelligence center will solve this crime. If you're in a vehicle moving around this county, we will solve this crime. So with that being said, but again, that's just what we deal with on a daily basis of people trying to exploit the elderly. And everything is so easy to find. If you were to Google my name right now, and I'm pretty protected, everything you want to know about Rob Hardwick, you can find today without paying any type of fees. And I think we're dealing with that too. So Again, the old school days of the obituaries are easy to find. It's an easy target to pick up an obituary. You can go online right now and pull up obituaries across the country and get that name. And you can kind of put together the date of birth in there if you look at it hard enough and kind of go through enough facts of what they put in the obituary write-up, I should say, and then form credit cards, bank accounts, get loans. I mean, so it's a little bit of technology is great, but technology too is been very, very dangerous for our elderly, especially.
Yeah. And especially like you were saying before, your mom, she's on social media, right?
Oh, of course, she's 80. She's on social media. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So she's probably on Facebook, and Facebook changes all their privacy settings like every 5 minutes. You never know what's actually out there. Is your birth date out there? Is your, people put all kinds of things on there, all of your kids, all of your personal information. So I can see how someone who is 80 really struggles to keep up with that kind of stuff. And it's just a breeding ground, right? Oh my gosh.
It is. And because of this too, I've been dying to bring this initiative to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. So we have a brand new initiative with Attorney General Ashley Moody. She's a very good friend of mine and my wife's. And we have brought this initiative with Senior versus Crimes here to St. Johns County just for things like this. And it's almost like a quasi help center, but also too, it's going to be full of people that have worked in law enforcement, whether it be federal, state, or local. And now they're retired and they want to give back to their community. So we don't pay them to work in there. They're going to be volunteers. Matter of fact, the guy that's going to run it for us is a retired FBI special agent, and he's going to run the Seniors versus Crime. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a great initiative through Ashley Moody, and Pam Bondi started it years ago when she was the Attorney General. And so now we're going to have it here in St. Johns County. And this will help people like you, Emily, that are working these crimes against the elderly. And then also too, kind of like, I'm not really sure if this is criminal or not. Great. We'll call the crimes against the elderly unit, which will be right here based out of South St. Johns County. And they can help you walk through if it's a possible exploitation case or a fraud case or just a simple misrepresentation of someone's identification.
Yeah. And speaking of crimes, these are all people that we don't know, but let's talk about the people that we do know, because probably the most vulnerable that you are is against your own family members, right?
I have to agree, and I don't have the exact numbers for you today as far as like family members that commit crimes, of course, but it's when we talk about, as people, get towards the end of their life and they have steady income coming in from retirement or who knows, from CDs or some type of investments, of course, is unfortunately we have these caretakers, whether it be family or friends or a contracted caretaker, taking advantage of the elderly and basically stealing from them and exploiting them. So it happens on a regular basis.
Yeah, I had a situation a few years ago where I had a meeting scheduled for an elderly woman and none of her family was coming. A lot of times when I plan with people, I plan with the whole family if it's an older individual. But she came in with a very young, a lot younger than her, I should say. He was probably 30, maybe. Quite young man who they tried to convince me that he needed to have power of attorney. And I didn't, as far as I was could tell, we have our little tests and our little things that we can do to determine whether or not the person is suffering from any type of cognitive disability. And I couldn't really tell that that was the case. So, I actually just ended up having to say, look, guys, I don't really feel comfortable, with this situation. Let's talk a little more. Let's put this on pause. I just kind of said, this is just our initial meeting, and tried to back out as gracefully as I could. But I was thinking, oh, lady, please don't go to another attorney and get this done,
It's funny, Emily, you saw one case. I can only imagine how much it goes on every single day that people are being exploited. And of course, this online love and romance that's going across where the person's either serving time somewhere or in a foreign country and can't come visit you right now because they're in England, and they're just exploiting these, and a lot of women too, of course, is what most of the victims are on the exploitation cases. But it's just so sad that they just, your whole life, you work hard, you save, you make the right financial decisions. And then it comes down to some 30-year-old guy you meet online or whether in person. Next thing you know, he's just draining your account and draining your life.
Exactly. And it's so easy to do once you have a power of attorney. I always recommend for those of you who are listening to have a power of attorney in place in case something happens to you and you become incapacitated. However, I also recommend that you implicitly trust that person and that hopefully you have someone in your life that will always put your best interest at heart. And And just so you know, too, I mean, it's not just a carte blanche where you can like just do whatever you want if you have power of attorney. You do have a fiduciary duty to that person. So you can be prosecuted if you violate that and you're doing some self-dealing. And you guys probably see some of that as well, don't you?
Yes, we're very busy here at the San Jose County Sheriff's Office in our special victims unit. We're dealing with elderly type cases.
Yeah, it's a shame. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We're out of time for now, but thank you again for your time, for your service. We really appreciate all that you guys do.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Emily. Thanks for everything you do for protecting our elderly too. But if anybody has any questions, they can contact our non-emergency, which is at 904-824-8304, and we will get some assistance and get you an answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You're listening to the Elder Law Hour, and we will be right back.
Are you ready to invest in real estate without the headaches? Look no further than investjacksonville.com, your trusted partner in turnkey real estate investments. With over 18 years of experience, our process has been fine-tuned, and now we're opening up our team to other people just like you. At investjacksonville.com, we're selective about who we work with because we believe in delivering the best. Our dedicated acquisition team scours the market to find the finest properties, while our skilled construction and maintenance team ensures every detail is taken care of. From new roofs to granite countertops, HVAC systems to plumbing and electrical, we leave no stone unturned to make sure there's no surprises. We're in this together with our investors for the long haul. With our first-year guarantee, we put our money where our mouth is. We guarantee your rental rate for the first year, giving you time to build reserves and budget for any surprises that may come your way later. We believe in our construction team and our tenant placement team, which is why we offer this unbelievable guarantee. We're committed to your success and peace of mind. We're passionate about making it simple and easy, and a no-brainer for others to get started investing because we know what real estate can do for people to reach financial freedom. So if you're ready to invest with confidence, contact Invest Jacksonville today at 904-536-3000 or visit our website at investjacksonville.com. Let us show you why there's nobody quite like us. investjacksonville.com, your authentic partner in hassle-free real estate investing. Contact us now.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks, and I am here with Charles Taverna, who is a CPA, and he is answering some of our burning questions today about real estate and taxes. So, Charlie, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Emily. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too. And so we have some questions here about rental real estate. And if you own rental properties, perhaps you're looking for maybe you've diversified your portfolio and a part of that is owning some rental properties for your retirement plan. So let's talk about what are the tax advantages of owning rental properties?
Well, if you're owning rental properties, you're going to be taxed on any income from your rental properties at your ordinary income rates.
Okay.
However, typically through depreciation, you will have a lot of non-cash expense associated with your real estate if you decide to place the property in service as a depreciable asset when you're filing your tax returns. Keep in mind that the land that your property sits on would not be depreciated, but the building, structure, and any other pieces that are associated with the property constructed,
like equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah, equipment, fixtures,
What
any
about a refrigerator?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, refrigerators, appliances. Like I said, even like I said, light fixtures, handles, any sort of durable good that is part of the property is subject to depreciation.
Okay, so what is that? Can we just say, like, for those of us who are not tax gurus, such as myself, so when you are depreciating, so the land, okay. So we separate it out, right? The land is
Right.
something that will appreciate in value over time. We all have seen that because there is only so much of it. But so you're talking about the building as the building ages. I know there's a formula for it, right? And you'll probably get into that in a minute. But so we're talking about as the building itself ages, or the appliances or the fixtures, within it age. That is kind of what you're talking about, just from a fifth grade level. Charlie, come on, break it down.
Yes, of course. Give you the 101 on depreciation. It's basically a concept that has come into play for accounting, or for what is the useful life of your building, of your refrigerator, of your personal property. How long will it last? Typically for residential real estate, the time frame is 24 and a half years of depreciation you could achieve from a residential real estate property. So for whatever the cost of that property, whatever the fair value of that property at the time that you place it into service as a rental property, that you can depreciate over 24 and a half years. So you will get an expense against any rental income for that depreciation. The reason this is kind of an interesting technique is that depreciation is non-cash. So you're taking an expense, on the property when cash is not really going out the door. I mean, maybe you have financed and you might have a mortgage payment that you're paying, but that's kind of you're making, that deals with a cash outflow that is separate from this depreciation that would be calculated based on the value of the property, less the land,
Mm-hmm.
and what that fair value is at the time that you start to rent the property. And that's not necessarily when a renter signs a lease. The property starts to be placed in service for tax purposes at the point when you start to advertise it for rent, or when it's ready for rent.
Okay.
And meaning that it's ready for rent would be like, hey, you're advertising, you're trying to get a renter in there, meaning that the property is ready for someone to come, sign, and occupy it.
Gotcha. And so with depreciation, you take that amount, and is that is it a credit on your tax return? How does it work as far as saving you money?
There are a couple different what should I say, natures on the tax return. You have your income, you have expenses, you have deductions, you have credits, and then you have the tax that you owe. In this case, depreciation would work as an expense against your income. So it's almost like it's not quite a deduction. I would say it's an expense against your rental income. And this would help reduce any revenue that you get for your rental property, collecting rental revenue. It'll help reduce that revenue to a point where your tax liability will be reduced accordingly.
Okay. So whatever income that you're making, it's basically going to offset some of that by saying, hey, this property is depreciating, but the useful life is going down. So that's how you're, able to get that benefit off of depreciation, by reducing the amount of income. And I'm trying not to use any actual words that would be on a tax return, but that's essentially the gist, right? Because I don't want to say it wrong, but okay.
Yeah, that's the essential gist. And a lot of times, if you have a rental property, you're going to have other expenses, whether it's, maintenance, lawn service, getting the plumber to come in and fix a faucet. You're going to have all different expenses that are going to come reduce your income. And from a cash perspective, you could be cash positive, versus the rental income you're receiving, the expenses that you're having to pay out of pocket, for that property. And so you could have cash, you could be cash positive, but then once you bring in the depreciation, that could reduce on your tax return a net positive income where it could actually be zero or negative. So you might actually wind up paying no tax
Right.
on the property, but you still have the cash in hand, that you've made. Now, eventually, if you go ahead and sell the property, then you will be subject to capital gains tax on selling the property, and that will be based on the depreciated value from the time and point when you've placed it in service to those 24 and a half years, as we talked about. If you sell it before then, whatever the value that will be taxed will be based on the depreciated value versus the proceeds you receive from the sale, which is, basically the purchase price that you're receiving for the property will determine your gain, and you will be subject to capital gains tax.
And what is, and the rate for capital gains tax, for our listeners, is
15% for short term and 20% for long term capital gains.
Okay. And
or reverse that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
15% for long term, 20% for short term capital. So if you're holding for a long term, you're at a 15%. Most people that are,
I'm going to start flipping more properties. Wait a minute, we're on the wrong side of this.
Yes.
Yeah. So short term is 20 and long term is 15, right?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, what if you want to pass a property or properties on to your children, and let's say because a lot of times I get some clients that are maybe tired. We call them tired landlords, meaning they are just really sick of being landlords and they don't want to own the property anymore. They just want to get rid of it. They want to give it to the kids. They don't want to deal. So they want me to draw up that deed, and we're just deeding it over to Junior, and it's his problem now. And so of course I say, well, let's talk about this, because that's not, that may be great for you, but that's not so great for Charlie Jr., right? When you're looking at it from a tax perspective. What are the downsides of just giving property away?
Well, if you're giving property away and it has significant value, that is deemed a transaction by the IRS, which is subject to tax. Whether that property is transferred with no exchange and we would say in accounting terms, consideration. If no consideration is given from the counterparty when that property is you transfer that property to them, then it would be considered a gift under the IRS codes, and therefore it would be subject to gift tax.
Right.
And depending on the size of your estate, it could reduce the exclusion, your estate tax exclusion. Because there's a really large lifetime estate and gift tax exclusion right now. For 2023, we're talking $12.92 million per person. So that's the amount of money or assets you can give away within your lifetime or let pass through your estate tax free. Correct, Charlie? Yeah, that is correct. That's a lot of money for 2023 per individual. Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the loss of the step up in basis for the person that does inherit the property. So, it's all great for mom and dad. Obviously, other than the gift tax implications, we'll kind of set that aside for a second. And let's talk about it on the side of the person that is receiving the property. So, what are the downsides for them if you're essentially giving a property versus inheriting it?
Well, if the donee decides to hold on to the property until they're no longer here, they are deceased, and the property then transfers to their heirs, as you mentioned, that property would be subject to a step up in basis. And what basis entails is basically the cost of the property, what was put into the property to give it its value. What was it paid? What was paid for the property by the donee or the deceased before the transfer?
Right.
And if the person had bought the property many, many years ago, then typically a property would have appreciated very much in value. And if the property is given away before that person is deceased, then the person who receives the property will have to pay taxes on the very low basis from the initial purchase of the property to whatever the fair value of the property is today, or when they plan to sell it, maybe later in the future. But if the person waits until they're deceased, then that basis jumps up to whatever the fair value of the property is at the point that that person is deceased and the transfer is made.
Right.
So if the person sells the property immediately after the person is deceased, they will actually be paying no taxes because there will be no gain, because the basis will then equal the fair value.
It could be a really big difference when we're talking over 30, years or more of owning property, especially, here in Jacksonville. Because 30 years ago, you may have bought a property for $50,000 that could easily be worth, $500,000,
Yes.
like 30 years later. The increases have been so significant, and especially in the past, I think the only time we really dipped was, 2011 through 2013, as far as like our property values going down. But I mean, other than that, like we've just been on a steady rise, and it's been quite significant the past couple of years. We're talking like, if you bought a property for $50,000 and let's say your parents bought a property for $50,000 that is now worth $500,000, because math is easy on that. And you just inherited that property. You're saying if you inherit it and you turn around and sell it, there is no gain, because that's what step up in basis is. Is that right?
That's right. And I mean, and you'll have selling expenses. You'll have expenses maybe to get the property ready for sale. You'll have expenses to, pay your broker your agent who's going to help sell that, maybe some legal expenses for title and whatnot. And you might actually wind up with a capital loss when you sell the property, which would actually reduce your income on your tax return and, lower your liability in the end.
And so the difference being, if you take that same property and you gift it, let's say, to your child or whoever, your son or daughter, that $500,000 property that has been gifted, now what happens when they go to sell it in that scenario?
In that scenario, the basis of the parent transfers it through the gift. So then they'll still have that $50,000 basis. They'll sell it for $500,000, and therefore they have to pay taxes on $250,000 of capital gains tax at long-term rates, but still very significant difference from when we first said that you actually might have lower taxes if you have step-up basis, if you sell immediately, if you sell right away.
Yeah, so that could be that is a very big difference. So, keep that in mind if you're concerned about how to pass on property for your heirs that would make the most sense to them for tax purposes. Definitely talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer, talk to Charlie, our CPA. Thank you so much, Charles Taverna, for being here today. Thank you for answering those questions. And if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me via email at charlestaverna@gmail.com, or drop me a line on the phone. My number is 732-766-1164.
Thank you so much for being here.
Always a pleasure, Emily.
And thanks. And we will also put Charles's information in elderlawhour.com. So if you want to check out our website at elderlawhour.com for more information about this episode and what we just talked about with Charles Taverna, head on over there and check it out. And we will be right back.
This is Vicki Oakes, your St. Johns County Supervisor of Elections. The 2024 elections are coming. They will be here soon. Are you election ready? If not, and you need to be, you can visit our website at votesjc.gov. That's votesjc.gov, or contact our office at 904-823-2238. Make sure you are election ready.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. I am here today with Travis Dauchy, and Travis is a private wealth advisor, and he works with Atlas Private Wealth Advisors, talking to them about, talking to individuals and families and business owners and executives about their estate planning. He's a wonderful tax planner. He also talks about retirement planning and how to make sure you shore up all of your assets for later on in life, and also business succession planning. So, Travis, thank you so much for being here.
Billy, I appreciate it. We'd love to delve into some interesting topics on family today.
So there's a big trend that's happening, and we talked about this in a previous show, called gray divorce. And it's people that are, getting divorced later in life. And, I think when people, and a lot of it is, the women making these decisions, and maybe, they're just like, hey, I have enough financial independence. I've given all my time to taking care of the family and my husband and all this stuff, and they maybe just don't want to do it anymore. I don't know. But there's, in today's society, we have so many multiple marriages and so many blended families. And this can really, it can really affect your wealth planning, right? And it's certainly retirement planning, because there's a whole division of assets, and, it gets so tricky with 401ks and all of the, all of the life that you've built together. And how do you, divvy it all up, especially if you're on a second or third marriage? How do you go about, working with someone? Let's say they're on their third or fourth marriage, what does that generally look like for you?
Obviously, we approach it with a lot more time gathering data and understanding the family dynamic. And it's understanding, where the goals are going. What are the objectives, say, for a number of children from potentially different spouses, financial obligations, everything from alimony to insurance requirements or business ownership that's divided. We've seen massive changes that people have to do to their estate planning. We've seen in some cases, you mentioned 401ks, we've seen beneficiaries on somebody's largest asset going to a person they haven't been married to in 30 years. And that was more by just oversight. And just
that's a big oops.
Yeah, to be clear, there is no do-over on that one. That person is going to get the money, and it doesn't.
And what I tell people too, Travis, is it doesn't matter what your will says. Okay, it doesn't matter. Whoever is named in that beneficiary designation, that's it. I mean, that is really, once the ink is dried on that, unless you change it, that's who's getting that asset. Correct.
They're not going through probate at all. There's no stop. It goes directly to those named beneficiaries. You're absolutely right. And we see it just, again, more in-depth planning. But I would say, in my experience, we see less and less people that unfortunately need wealth management type work that we do. The more times you have to split the pie. It's not any judgment on the relationships or any of that. It's simply the math that you can only slice it so many times for most people before there's a real degradation of the assets available to apply towards retirement, to apply towards a long-term care cost, to apply towards their estate planning. So it takes some special skill and a lot more time to understand the issues and not step on, we look at landmines that are out there from a standpoint of, is there a specific child potentially that might have an issue with the estate planning, or the longer life goes on from a power of attorney standpoint, from a control standpoint. Are there other spouses that may try to interject where maybe it really wasn't the intention for that person to have that role? And if these things aren't addressed in writing, as you said before, they're not going to happen. This is something that doesn't just get fixed by luck. This has to be written down.
Yeah, because, we're not living like in Downton Abbey where everything goes
Hereditary titles.
right, where everything goes to the firstborn son and everyone else is like out of luck. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so complicated nowadays, because what I see a lot of is, when someone's on maybe that second marriage and they have children from a previous marriage, the real concern for me are those kids, because I'm thinking it's so easy to accidentally disinherit them when you've remarried and you've perhaps jointly titled all of your assets now with the new spouse, which is very easy to do. So
I've had some incredible ones where the unintended sequence of events of people that were connected to World War II. And there was some famous individual who had a royalty payment that's paid for under French law for 70 years.
Oh, wow.
And going through that process, the lady who was the primary earner, she passed very young during the war. Had been married 6 months, so all assets just transferred over to her husband, who then also died like 6 months later. Went on to his sisters, who then went to the other side of the world, including the U.S. And their lives have been, for the most part, funded by this income stream from a person they didn't even know. Wow. So without a clear plan on this stuff, the most unimaginable sequences of events can happen. And again, I don't know. I have no idea what her intent would have been, but I doubt it would have been to pay for the lives of people she basically didn't know. Right. And that's just the reality of what happened. And then other ones where, again, super complex, multiple layers of families. We've done some events where we grabbed the whole family, all the way down to the great grandnieces and nephews, multiple families, the whole layer, and explained to them what each of their estate responsibilities might be, and walked them through and did annual regular reviews to explain how assets would be transferred. And those were some people we've worked with who they were able to move north of $1 billion through to the family, and everybody's objectives basically got funded. But you had to know your role. You had to know you're not a lottery winner in this case. A lot of lottery winners get tripped up because they had no assets and no plan to manage them, and then they have a lot of assets.
Right.
And very shortly they end up broke again because you're just not ready for that. So the planning that we did was around, with this blended large family, was explaining to each member of the family their role and really educating them, just having each person understand what they needed to do, what they should do, and kind of what they shouldn't do. It came into these things of prenups. They're never any fun. Nobody wants to do them. But if undone and something happens, that could ruin the planning, all the other planning that's gone into this process. So
absolutely,
you can't take these things lightly. And again, the more layers you put in, the more planning is required. It's really exponential, the amount of work and planning that goes in. And I'm sure, Emily, you see it on your side all the time. Is you can't leave a stone unturned. The more layers of family you get, but is there anyone that you would think is a stone that gets missed for people?
Yeah, I mean, when there are blended families, it gets it just gets really tricky because you're retitling assets with your new spouse. And then the main thing that I tell people is, we touched on it before, is, are those beneficiary designations? It's just something that, it's not a set it and forget it. None of estate planning is set it and forget it, because life changes, and a new marriage is certainly a reason to call my office or call your estate planning attorney and your financial advisor, because it's your whole plan is going to change, and your objectives may change. You may have more children, so you have to balance your existing kids with the new kids. Perhaps there's a large age gap in that. I've seen some families that the third wife is younger than the first daughter. There's what I mean? And it's like, okay, there's kids from 3 marriages now. How are we going to plan for all of that? And what are we going to do? And, everyone's sort of advocating, for their interests, and it can get incredibly, tricky, but obviously it's something that you just have to plan out. You have to figure out, what you want to do. What are your goals? Is funding college a goal for you? Do you want to pay for weddings? What do you want to provide for your kids? And certainly, it's funny, people business plan so much more than they family plan.
Right.
And, when you plan your business, one of the first things that you do is you set out your core values, right? It's like, oh, what is our mission? What are the core values of this business going to be? And you don't do that for your family, right? You don't really, a lot of people anyway. My husband, we had this idea that we were going to just define what our family mission was and what our value system was. And it's really about preserving relationships. So no matter what happens with us, and I do this a lot when I plan with families that have really young kids, and they're thinking about, who would I nominate for a guardian, for a child. That's a really big decision. And sometimes they struggle with that. So I created this whole guide to have them really go through the process of mapping out what their values are, mapping out what your letter of instructions really would be for them. But I think it's important for everyone, right? Especially, like in this situation, I mean, it can get as tricky as anything when you're competing. Not your kids are competing, but there's competing interests, right?
It could be conflicting interests. They go from competing to conflicting overnight. And some of it's the last stuff you would expect to see, but that's where looking down these paths and understanding what decisions you're making are going to have a potential blowback at some point. And really having a tool to address them, or better yet, kind of a tool to avoid them, to mitigate this before it ever starts. I've seen a lot of situations with some of the trusts that we might delve into, where there's so many people involved as trustees that decisions can't get made, and they have the word "and" in there. So everybody has to sign off to get anything done. You need competent people who have the entrusting capabilities to really make decisions and to effectuate your actual goals. I see it even more sometimes now I think we're close to 50% of the adults in this country are single. So we've taken, we spend so much of our time looking at families, and it makes sense. But I would say that's a big change in the demographic, is between passing of the spouse, divorce, or never married, no plans to get married, sometimes not in any long relationship. So, some of the decisioning we run into it really is predicated by this family dynamic. If that's not the case, one of the things that we run into is questions about long-term care. And a lot of people, that's something in the back of their mind. It's a large cost. It tends to be the number one thing that eliminates estates. can cause severe hardship to other family members who are trying to help support this. But what you can really run into is, most people don't know this, but for a married couple going through and applying for like long-term care insurance, not that they have to, but if they did, they're looking at a 20 to a 25% discount on the cost simply because they're married. And what the long-term care companies understand, they do the math, is if you are single, you're an individual, if you have a medical issue, you don't have a spouse right there to lean on to help with some of those things. The first thing you're going to go to is paid care. So they know their costs are much higher. The usage of long-term care policies is much higher for single individuals. So thinking about that, make sure you understand there's a financial cost to get the types of protection you may want to have, and don't think just because it costs more you don't need it, because a lot of times you absolutely do need it. You need to be thinking ahead. You need to look at your family dynamic. You need to have discussions with myself, with Emily, and say, realistically, this is what I see, and these are the problems I foresee. Because if we don't know those issues that are on the horizon that you perceive, we can't craft a strategy to avoid them, to help you. So
absolutely,
it's a matter of thinking ahead, planning ahead, and not missing any curveballs that might be out there.
That is very, very true. And it's funny because sometimes after a couple of planning sessions with clients, they say to me, well, you just know all of our dirty laundry now. You know all of our family secrets. And I'm like, yes, and I should know them, because how can I protect you? How can I protect your kids if I don't know about crazy Uncle Bob or whoever it is?
Yeah.
If I don't understand the relationship and the dynamic between certainly the family, but to your point, for singles, that's a different set of challenges. Who can you trust? Do you have that trusted friend that is the person? I mean, I've had people come to me and want me to be nominated as their power of attorney, as their trustee. I personally don't. Yeah, you too.
It's not my role to make those decisions. I'm helping you get there, but absolutely you can't. You need to have the trusted people, and if you don't, there are things you can do with corporate trustees, with groups that can step in really to do all the paperwork. But you need somebody who's a living person who can make a real decision and help out. That's a critical part.
Absolutely. Well, I think this has been really great. A lot of interesting things to think about, different perspectives. If you're a single person, you have a different set of challenges as with a family. If you have a family, especially a blended family, you're pretty much already probably aware of that's going to be challenging. So thank you so much, Travis. This has been really, really great. If someone wants to get in touch with you, how should they do that?
Love to connect. Best way to reach me is 949-244-9568. That's my main number, 949-244-9568. Or you can email me at tdauchy, TDAUCHY, at Atlas, ATLASPWA.com. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much. And we will provide that information on elderlawhour.com. So you guys can head on over to that website to connect with Travis or find out more about the show. And Travis, thanks again for being here. And we will take a quick break.
Are you approaching retirement or entering a new chapter of life? Now is the time to consider critical decisions that impact your future and the well-being of your loved ones. As you navigate this transition, ensure you've secured your legacy through proper estate planning. Don't fall into the common misconception that you and your spouse can make decisions for each other in times of legal incapacity without a plan in place. Without proper estate planning, you risk a probate judge making decisions for you, which can be costly and cumbersome for your spouse. Protect your assets and ensure they align with your unique circumstances and objectives. Avoid the default state laws that may not reflect your wishes and could lead to unintended consequences, such as disinheriting your spouse or forcing them to litigate your estate. You also may be considering the possibility of a new relationship after the loss of a spouse. It's essential to enter these relationships with clarity, safeguarding your assets and preserving existing family ties. A premarital agreement becomes crucial in these situations, providing legal protection and clarity. When it comes to your children, thoughtful estate planning is key. Protect their inheritance from squandering, divorces, lawsuits, and bankruptcies. Your hard-earned wealth should be a source of security, not vulnerability. Additionally, plan for long-term care, a significant consideration as you enter retirement. Secure a long-term care insurance policy while you still qualify, and explore alternatives that can convert into life insurance if not needed. Statistics show a 70% likelihood of requiring long-term care after the age of 65, making proactive planning essential. Our team can guide you through this process, helping you replace impersonal state-written plans with a tailored approach that safeguards your assets and family. Don't overlook estate planning as you approach retirement. Book a call with us today to secure your future with confidence. Visit emilyhickslaw.com and book a call today. We'd love to help.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. I'd like to end the show today with a question that I've gotten recently about having access to a will after someone has passed. So I had a question from a potential client that came in, and he isn't getting access to a will under which he believes that he is a beneficiary. So just to give you a little bit about the process there, the process is whoever has possession of the will of the deceased person must file that with the local probate court, and that begins the probate process. So like I said, to begin probate, the personal representative or whoever has possession of the will must file the will with the court where the decedent lived. And the person, the person who has possession may be the executor, may not be the executor, but they will need to begin the probate proceedings with the help of the court. The court first has to approve them as the personal representative before they can carry out any instructions in the will. And those duties also include requiring the personal representative to notify all of the beneficiaries under the will. So if there is someone who's refusing to comply with that or notify you about the contents of the will, one option that's not it's not a great option, but one option that you would have would be to force the issue by proceeding in probate court as if there was no will, like as if the person had died intestate. And then that would create pretty much a catalyst for the person who has the will to respond by filing it with the court, or your action would proceed as if there were no will. And, the downside to that is the state is going to determine who receives what in that scenario, and that may or may not be to your liking. But, as far as the process works, the person who has possession of the will must file it in court. And if not, that is one way that you can kind of force the issue there. So I hope that has been helpful. And thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to connect with me or learn more about today's episode, please visit us at elderlawhour.com. I'm Emily Hicks, and we will catch you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. Join us this and every Saturday for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.